beautiful people out there in this great wide world, man. Welcome back to the world of fandom frequency, baby. The multiverse of fandom and pop culture, where we break down everything in the world of it, man. Whether you're talking movies, all that good jazz, music, anime, you name it, we talk about it. And yeah, so with no further ado, let's get into this thing. And just watched this movie randomly on a whim. Big fan of the lead actor, Michael J. Fox himself, talking about one of his earliest films in his career, and not necessarily one of his first successes, but one of the last few films he did before he blew up the 21st century with the Oscar-nominated, Oscar-winning trilogy of The Lord of the Rings. I'm talking about Peter Jackson's 1996 film, co-written with him and his wife. I'm talking about 1996's The Frighteners, baby. That's right. Starring one of the greatest actors to grace the silver screen, and that's damn right, baby. I'm talking about Michael J. Fox, man. America's sweetheart, America's son before we had America's dad and Tom Hanks. You know what I mean? And yeah, so for those of y'all that ain't already familiar with this one, it's a little bit more of a cult classic because it literally made about it might have lost a few million or barely made back their budget and then some. So the movie was a huge box office bomb for the time, relatively speaking. Well, let's not go with huge. It was a pretty big bomb for the time, man. That is for damn sure. But this film definitely deserves another look, man, because I really, really enjoyed this one, man. I dug it a lot. And the essential, kind of like the log line, if you will, the premise of the film is that Michael J. Fox's character of Frank Bannister, and you hear that name a lot, so it's hard to forget, but Frank Bannister, he plays a psychic paranormal investigator, if you will, and he literally does have a connection to the other side because he can communicate and see ghosts, apparitions, you know what I'm saying? Poltergeist, all that jazz. And essentially, his life fell apart after the tragic and sudden death of his wife, and all his life went to shit from there. And now he works as a paranormal con man, if you will, where he uses the ghosts that he's friends with to get in on the business with them, to scare other people into thinking that their house is actually haunted, in order for him to offer his services to them, make about $400 or $500 each visit, move on, and try to finish the house that he never got to finish for his wife when they were renovating the house and whatnot. And that's essentially your setup right there. But unbeknownst to him, a great evil is back in the town, and there has been literally 20-some murders that have been going on frequently throughout this town for the last several years in the 90s at the time when it was supposed to be the present, of course. And that's pretty much your setup right there, man. And just jumping off of that plot point, I mean, just jumping off that plot and everything, it's such an awesome, fun idea of this dude that can see and communicate with ghosts and everything like that. He's cool with them, you know what I mean? It's almost like Casper for teens and adults, you know what I'm saying? Like, it really does remind me of that. It's definitely got a Beetlejuice vibe to it, and it ain't just the Danny Elfman score, which, in my personal opinion, is pretty kick-ass and one of his most underrated ones, I would say, or just not as appreciated as some of the other ones, you know. But the guy's got a lot of hits, man. Spider-Man, Beetlejuice, Frankenweenie, you know what I mean? He's done a lot of shit, you know? So, you know, Batman 89, of course, I got to mention that if you're talking about Danny Elfman, but yeah, man, and this freaking cast is awesome too, man. You got some familiar faces like Dee Wallace, you know what I'm saying, playing Patricia Ann, you know, the lady killer, if you will, and I ain't talking about hooking up either. I'm talking about really a lady that's killing. She's crazy, man, and she's teaming up with her psycho boyfriend, Johnny, what was his name? Johnny Charleston? Yeah, Johnny Charleston, played by Jake Busey, man. You know, he's really good at playing these really weird, crazy type characters, you know what I'm saying? Last time I had seen him was over there in Stranger Things Season 3 about 3 years ago now, yeah, at the recording of this vid right here. So yeah, man, and you got some other great horror legends and horror alumni as well. You got John Astin up in here. He does a quick cameo. And of course, he was the original Mr. Adams, you know what I'm saying? From the Addams family, of course. You got Trini Alvarado, who's kind of playing the love interest, if you will, to Michael J. Fox's character of Frank Bannister and all that. Dr. Lucy Lynn, or something like that. I think it's Dr. Lucy Lynn. Yeah, Dr. Lucy Lynn, something like that. Yeah. So, yeah, man. And she actually, she's not necessarily like a huge actor compared to some of these people, but she got her start doing 1994's version, Little Women, with a lot of the great, some great legendary actresses in their own right, man. You had freaking Susan Sarandon and Winona Ryder and Kirsten Dunst and shit like that. Even Christian Bale's in it, so you got a lot of great talent up in there. And Trini Alvarado, man, or I just totally mixed. Yeah, Trini Alvarado. Yeah, she was really, really awesome in this movie, man. And I don't understand why she didn't do like bigger movies and stuff like that into the 2000s and everything. I thought she really nailed it. It really was a lot of fun to watch this movie. And her chemistry with Michael J. Fox was really good too. Like you totally could buy them, like kind of getting into each other and whatnot. So it's a fun flick, man. You got him running around with his ghost buddy Cyrus, played by the great Chai McBride, man. And let me get his other homie here. Who was that, man? Because you got Peter Dobson playing the character of Ray. You got Arlie Ermy doing a quick little small role up in here, which was pretty fun to see. And Jim Fife, who played Stewart, his other ghost friend, and Jim Stewart's, the little nerdy guy or whatever who died like looking like maybe in the 50s or 60s. And then you got what's his name, Cyrus, who died in the 70s, so he still got he still got the afro and everything, man, looking like he just stepped out of Soul Train. You know what I'm saying? So that was pretty funny. And yeah, man, I love all the ghosts and everything like that, and just the quirky energy to this movie is just infectious, man. Like I just really dig like weird movies like that. I'm a big Beetlejuice guy. You know what I'm saying? Don't necessarily love Edward Scissorhands, but I really dig the vision of what Tim Burton was going for. You know what I'm saying? It's just to me not necessarily a movie that always jive for me, but I like that quirky energy that Peter Jackson and Robert Zemeckis, the man, one of the great masterminds behind my favorite movie of all time, Back to the Future. And he was producing this thing and giving Peter Jackson one of his first bigger kind of movies, you know what I'm saying, for the time, and giving him his big shot. So that was all really well done, man. I really dug that. And one of the most standout performances in this movie is by Jeffrey Combs, man, playing Milton. This guy is a fucking weirdo, man, but he does such a great job of just playing this weird, off the wall, like detective, I guess you could say. And man, he is just like the whole scene. And when they first introduce him, when he's at the police station and he starts like talking and he's like giving his whole monologue about the past of Frank's past and what happened with his wife and everything like that. And as he keeps continuing to explain the story to Lucy Lynn over there, Trini Alvarado's character, he's like walking backwards slowly, like as he's explaining the story and shit. I'm like, where are you going, bro? Like, come back over here. I'm trying to hear what you're saying. Like, he was cracking me up, man. He just all these like weird mannerisms and shit like that. Like, he's so funny in this movie, man. And for those of you that don't know Jeffrey Combs, he was actually the lead character of Reanimator, another great horror cult classic right there. He's done tons of different films over the course of his career as well. A lot of niche, kind of more underground indie type movies. You know what I'm saying? But Reanimator is one of those big ones. This is one of the bigger ones that he did. One of the more recognizable movies, if you will, in his career. But yeah, man, it was a lot of fun there. And just the overall like the actual horror side of things, like when they try to actually kind of like scare you or creep you out and stuff like that, like some of that imagery and some of those moments in the film really, really work. And the balance of the comedy and the horror, I think, is actually pretty well balanced. I think at times the humor can get a little much, you know what I'm saying, depending on what your kind of sense of humor is and shit like that. But for me, 90% of the time, the comedy was working really well, the humor and everything. I was cracking up, especially at Jeffrey Combs' character of Milton. Funny ass shit, man. But the ghosts were cracking me up, like the judge ghost over there humping the mummy in the museum scene. I'm like, what? Like, is this really happening right now? Like, am I watching a ghost hump a mummy right now? Like, what is happening right now? Like, it's just like funny what the fuck moments in this movie, man. It is full of them for sure. And but yeah, man. And as I stated at the top of this thing, man, who doesn't love Michael J. Fox if you're familiar with his work? You know what I'm saying? Marty McFly, Teen Wolf, man. List goes on, man. And it's such a bummer that he had to get diagnosed with that damn Parkinson's disease. He is an amazing actor, and I feel like he would have been like as big as Tom Cruise, Leo DiCaprio, all these guys would have been doing some big stuff. Who knows, man? He might have been doing some Marvel movies or some shit. So I've always been very bummed and kind of bummed out on that, man. And you know what I'm saying? But he has some great legendary work that he's going to be leaving behind, when he does pass on to the other side, you know what I'm saying? And just love Michael J. Fox in this movie. His performance is just so, it's actually kind of like a little bit of a different character than he normally was playing at the time, Not as necessarily bubbly and like upbeat as a lot of his other characters like Marty McFly or people like that. So I liked how his character was actually a little more like kind of depressed and kind of, like more of like a weirdo and kind of like more fringe and kind of like an outcast, you know what I'm saying? And getting to see those darker shades to the character and what he was going through and the whole implication of people blaming him for the murders, even though he has nothing to do with it, but he can't prove to people that he can see ghosts. He can't, who's going to believe that? You know what I'm saying? So I like that whole element to his character. And I thought Michael J. Fox did such a great job of just portraying this guy that's so conflicted, gone through a lot of different stuff, you know what I'm saying? Turned to some shady means to try to make ends meet and stuff like that. But you can see in his exchanges with Lucy and with his exchanges with other people that he is a genuinely nice guy. You know, he has this great relationship with the sheriff and everything, and he really is a good guy with a great, with with a big heart, and he really shows and has that vulnerability in his performance, man. And it does kind of play off of kind of Michael J. Fox's kind of public persona, if you will, and everything like that. So it was really really fun to watch him in this movie, man. And you do kind of see some of those earlier shades of his Parkinson's disease before it was made public to everybody out there in the world and whatnot. You could see it kind of in there sometimes, but it definitely doesn't get in the way of his performance. He did such a great job with it overall. So no complaints there, you know what I'm saying? And just the overall like zany style and energy that Peter Jackson brought to this movie, man. I kind of miss this Peter Jackson where he was just doing weird, crazy, off the wall shit. Like when they get creepy with the imagery and they really get nasty, it gets nasty in this thing. It doesn't get gory per se, so it doesn't go like fully hard R like his previous film Dead Alive, which I did watch part of in the past, and holy shit, I definitely gotta get around to finishing that and discussing that here on the channel because that movie's a mind fuck, let me tell you. And so is this one, in a good way. And it's just a fun, romp, man. It's just a good time, and I love just the weird energy, and just the one thing I really love is like the character's ability of being able to see visions from the past if he's in the same environment, and him being able to see these ghosts and being able to see the other side and everything like that. I just thought that was such an interesting ability for a character to have in a way that wasn't necessarily shown on screen in the same way before, and hasn't necessarily been shown the exact same way since either. And I think this kind of idea isn't necessarily been touched upon as much in over the years since this movie came out. And I think it's actually like a little ahead of its time and actually very unique, even still to this day in the horror genre. Like you definitely get the Ghostbuster vibes, even from the lettering on just on the actual title on the poster itself, and just the vibes of it, and even the look of the ghost is very Ghostbusters ish, especially the first two films. You know what I'm saying? And the newest one, Afterlife, definitely got back to that vibe a little bit, but kind of mixed in the newer style, newer color palette, and CG and whatnot. And that's one of my only negatives that actually brings me to one of my only negatives of this movie. Really, they went a little too ambitious with the CGI and the special effects for the time this came out, because it definitely does not age well 26 years later. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like sometimes it's like that's a little rough, man. But the ideas, what they were going for, hella ambitious, really cool, and still as a concept and conceptually holds up and is still unique and very much kind of like what New Mutants was going for when they were pitching that over at Fox and Marvel and stuff, but didn't necessarily nail it in that way. This was definitely something like that if it wasn't based on any previous IP. And that's another thing I love about this movie, how it's such a unique and kind of like fresh idea that really still stands the test of time 26 years later, and really stood apart back in 96. And maybe it was a little too ahead of its time, you know? Audiences in 96 weren't necessarily loving it, might have had a lot of competition at the time. Who knows? I don't know. I was only like a year old or two, so I can't tell you. But hey, it's a really, really fun movie, man. You know what I'm saying? I do think the comedy, your mileage will vary for sure. You know what I'm saying? And oh yeah, before we go, I cannot go without mentioning my girl Dee Wallace, man. She did such a great job with the character of Patricia Ann or whatever. She really seemed like actually kind of innocent when she was kind of putting on that facade. You know what I mean? And it had me even questioning like, oh damn, is this girl as crazy as they said she was? She definitely was. But I really love Dee Wallace's performance in this movie, man. You know what I mean? You get some really cool, like, almost like Deborah Voorhees vibes, you know what I'm saying? And getting a little bit of that, like, Norman Bates kind of vibe in the third act there when he goes on full killer mode and whatnot, dressing up like his mama. But I actually really, really love her performance in this movie. It's something very different to what Dee Wallace usually does, too, because the only other movie I can think of off the top of my head that I've seen, and I'm looking through her most notable movies right here just to make sure I'm not missing something. But yeah, Three from Hell and Three from Hell and what was the other one? Lords of Salem. Those are the only other movies, especially in the horror genre, in particular, that I've seen or heard of where she didn't play, where she played the bad guy, and this is one of the other ones. So it's really, really cool getting to see, the mom from E.T., horror section straight ahead over there. It's cool to get to see her do something different and all these years later. And her performance is just really good, man. Like, it's actually probably I would probably say in the top three performances with Jeffrey Combs as crazy ass and Michael J. Fox. Really love those guys, and they did such a great job with it. But yeah, Dee Wallace, man, big shout outs to her. And this is one of those movies that proves why today she is hailed as one of the best actresses in the horror genre and a scream queen in her own right, and is just an overall dope performer. And I really dig it. And I didn't get a chance to meet her at Monsterpalooza these last couple years and stuff, but I'm crossing my fingers and hoping for next time I'll get to see her. Maybe she'll be at CreepyCon or something. We'll see. Hopefully I'll get to meet the great legend herself one day. But yeah, man, I really dig this movie. I'm gonna give it a straight up solid 7.5. Extra 0.5 for my boy Michael J. Fox, and just for this movie being a lot of fun. But what says you, y'all? I want to know what you think about this movie, The Frighteners. For all my people in the late 20s and above, y'all might already be familiar with this one. Let me know, when did you first see it, and if you've liked it since the 90s, let me know how it holds up for you. And for all you people that haven't seen it yet but don't mind a few spoilers mixed in there, let me know what you thought about it and all that. And for all you people just joining us for the first time, we cover a lot of different stuff, man. All the big new releases and stuff, the Stranger Things, the Cobra Kais, the Marvel, the DCs, the Star Wars stuff. But we do like getting into some of these more niche, more unique movies, outside of the big franchises, by popular or just our favorite filmmakers or actors or genres, you know what I'm saying? We like to mix it up here at Fandom Frequency. So if you're liking that kind of stuff, make sure you click the subscribe button and you stick around. We got a lot more stuff coming, and we're only going to keep getting bigger and better and just really keeping it fresh, man. So make sure y'all sticking around and not sleeping on any of that. But until we see y'all again, and for all of our returning day one subscribers and all that, much love to each and every one of you. Much love to all you new watchers and listeners and all that stuff. And until we see you again, make sure y'all stay safe out there and you stay tuned, you don't sleep. Peace out, y'all.